a regular season finale in South Philly for the Owls, and it was senior day. One last go-around at the Link.
One last go-around at the Link, but basketball season starting off, and the McKee era is really starting to take flight. The Owls are making a statement down in Orlando.
And I'm Lindsay Mofford at the Leocore Center, where I will tell you all about the life of a student athlete. OwlSports Update is live, and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of OwlSports Update. I'm Sean McGee, and alongside me is Brian Steinmetz, and this is the last time you'll see this anchor duo for the semester.
Yeah, that's right. Unfortunately, that is correct, but we still have a half hour of Temple sports coverage coming your way. Basketball recaps from the Orlando Invitational, plus we take a look at the cross country's road trip to Bethlehem.
But let's start off with some conference honors and senior day for the football team as bowl season approaches. New coach, new leaders, same Temple team. 8 wins during the regular season for a second straight year, and now some awards to go with it, thanks to some AAC honors, 7 Owls in all.
It's one of my goals I set out the beginning of the year, and it's a huge blessing to be able to accomplish one of your goals.
Man, I'm really excited my first time really on the field playing a lot. It is an honor for me to get this award, so I'm just going to take it step by step.
It's something that has been a goal of mine since I've been here, and I haven't made it yet. So finally getting it this year has been awesome.
A lot of accolades for me just means a lot to me. It means my hard work is paying off, and yeah. So
I'm thankful. It's all God, because at the end of the day, you put the work in, but it's a lot of his God-given ability, and to be able to go out there and do it every day consistently, that you got to give thanks to the man above.
To get for a second straight year in a row, just show some consistency and just trying to get better from here on out, never satisfied. Yeah, I'm just blessed for that recognition.
Quincy Roche brought home quite the honor as Conference Defensive Player of the Year and First Team All-Conference. Joining him on First Team are a lot of the guys you just saw, and their names you've heard all season long: Yifai Maije, Sean Bradley, and of course the anchor of that offensive line, Matt Hennessy. Second team honors go to Sam Franklin, breakout receiver Jaden Blue, and Jovan Fair. Most of the players you see here are on the defensive side of the football, and that should speak to the type of season they had. On the field, one last regular season game for Rod Carey and the Owls to close out the 2019 season, and it came against a struggling UConn Huskies team still searching for its first conference win in its very last conference game.
Yeah, the Huskies were playing their last AAC game before heading to the Big East next season, but to the Link we go.
A Saturday afternoon showdown on senior day. Let's start off with UConn. Early in the first, Ardell Brown receives a 51-yard dime from quarterback Jack Zergiotis. That puts the Huskies up 7-0 early. A bit of a shock to the Owls, but a little bit later in the first now, and backup quarterback Steven Krajewski rushes into the end zone for an easy score of his own. Put UConn up 14, and they have the Owls on their heels.
But Temple responds. Anthony Russo drops back in shotgun. He throws up a prayer, but it gets answered by Brandon Mack for a 63-yard score. He finishes the day with 171 yards and 2 touchdowns. Second quarter now. After a UConn field goal, Todd Centeo's in at quarterback for Temple, and he connects with the wideout Jaden Blue for a touchdown. 17-14 UConn going into the half.
Russo is now in to start the second half, and he had the deep ball working with Brandon Mack all game long, and here they are once again, a 41-yard touchdown to give the Owls their first lead of the day.
And he does not just pass the ball, folks. Check it out. Russo rushing in the end zone for another Temple touchdown. The QB showing off some nice footwork as the Owls are starting to pour it down on UConn. But let's not forget about the run game. Ray Davis getting in on the party down in South Philly with a 55-yard touchdown run to cap off a 77-yard drive. He racked up 105 total yards on the day.
And of course, that stellar Temple defense had to add some points on the board. Sam Franklin picks this one off and makes the crib call. Hello, crib. Franklin's coming. Remember when the Owls were down 14-0? Neither do we. That pretty much does it in this one. Aside from a sloppy first quarter, Temple dominates UConn at the Link, and it wins by a score of 49-17 to leave UConn winless in the AAC for 2019. The Owls are eligible to play in their 6th consecutive bowl game. For the first time in program history, Temple's had 5 consecutive games with a 100-yard receiver. This time it was Brandon Mack racking up 171 yards.
As for the quarterback, Anthony Russo threw for 2 touchdowns on the day and 21 for the season. That's tied for second best in program history. And on defense, Quincy Roche's 13 sacks ties Adrian Robinson for the all-time Temple season record. No wonder that guy is Defensive Player of the Year.
If there's one takeaway from this football season, it's been the emergence of redshirt sophomore Jaden Blue, a second-team all-conference selection. Even with receivers around him like Wright and Mack, Blue is the one setting program records. Inside the Nest anchor, Brooklyn Vaughn dives deeper.
What a difference 1 year and 1 football season can make. Just a year ago, the future was unclear for Jaden Blue when he stepped away from his team after just 7 games and after only 3 receptions. But that was 2018. Now, at the conclusion of the 2019 season, the 6-foot, 180-pound receiver is about to rewrite the record books while being one of the most instrumental pieces of Temple's offensive unit. When a new coach came to town, Blue decided to rededicate himself to the program, but he needed Carrie's blessing first.
Me and Coach just sat down. He just told me he wanted me to take care of myself. He just wanted to know if I was all in, and I told him that I was. It wasn't much other than that. Coach Carrie gave me a genuine vibe, and I gave him the same.
That conversation during the offseason has set up this record-setting run in 2019. Blue has recorded more than 100 receiving yards in 5 games this season, and he's just now 25 yards shy of being the first receiver in program history to break the 1,000-yard plateau.
I always would have thought it would have been possible, but I didn't know it would come so fast. It kind of came quicker than I would have thought, but I always knew I was capable of doing that, so that's not something that's very, takes me by surprise, but it came a lot quicker than I thought.
And through all of the hype surrounding Jaden Blue, it's important to remember one thing. He's only a redshirt sophomore, which means there is so much more in store for the underclassman wide receiver.
I'm just happy for everything that's happened this year. Just given what I have been through in the past and stuff, I'm happy.
Etching his name in the record books and having an outstanding comeback season is certainly something Blue should be happy about. Reporting from Lincoln Financial Field, I'm Brooklyn Vaughn, OwlSports Update.
Blue will need to make the jump next season to help carry this offense after the departure of a few key players. Just 25 yards shy of 1,000, he'll have one final chance to eclipse that number in the team's bowl game in the coming weeks.
With senior day over and the regular season finished, it's time for Temple football to focus on bowl season.
The Owls will learn their fate Sunday evening when all the bowl matchups are announced. Joining us now to break down the Owls' regular season march into bowl eligibility is Inside the Nest reporter Dom Gillespie. Hey, Dom.
Thanks, guys. When you take a step back and look at this season, the Owls fared very well in their first year with the new head coach. Aside from some road bumps in the middle, this was some of the best football the Owls played to date. Let's take a look back on this season. The start of this season went just as well as one could have hoped for. The Owls lost a lot of talent to the draft and were welcoming in an entire new staff. The Cherry and White beat 2 ranked teams in the first 6 weeks. Take away a road loss against the Buffalo Bulls, and the Owls would have been well on their way to a top 25 ranking. Sprinkle in a win over their old head coach, and the Owls were 5-1 through the first 6. Middle of the season is where the Owls really struggled. After beating Memphis, they took on SMU and Central Florida, their 2 worst games of the season. The Owls really struggled on both sides of the football, being outscored 108-42. Temple finished this season very strong, winning 3 out of their last 4, only losing to the winner of the AAC East in the Cincinnati Bearcats. The Owls finished the season with 8 total wins and are bowl eligible for the 6th straight season, continuing the current program record. Not a bad start from the man out of Northern Illinois. Aside from the linebacker core, the Owls will be returning a lot of talent as well. Breakout players like Jaden Blue, Quincy Roche, and Matt Hennessy all have at least a year of eligibility left. Might want to grab some shades because the future is still bright for these Owls. Reporting from Plasma, I'm Dom Gillespie. Sean and Brian, back to you.
Thank you, Dom. Good stuff as always. Time for a short break, but coming up, a road trip where the women's basketball team needed passports to get to its Thanksgiving break.
And the men's team was also on the road in Florida for 3 games in 4 days. That included a tight one against nationally ranked Maryland.
Plus, when OwlSports Update returns, we'll have a story for you about a Big Ten transfer who has to hang back for a season before rushing the court as an Owl.
Welcome back to OwlSports Update. While most of Temple's student body was back home on break, the men's basketball team took a trip down to Central Florida for the Orlando Invitational. 3 games in 4 days, and it all began with a matchup against a 5th-ranked Maryland team on Thanksgiving. Of course, Maryland was favored heading into the matchup versus Temple, but the Owls showed grit all game long. They even led by 5 at the half thanks to some sharp shooting, as you see J.P. Mormon draining a 3 here. Quentin Rhodes adds 9 to the scoreboard as well. 3 of those are thanks to this bucket right here. And here's that grit I talked about. Temple's leading scorer on the day, Alani Moore, with a tough finish to close the half, but all that grit wasn't enough. Maryland catches fire in the second half, ends up beating Temple by a score of 76-69 and handing the Owls their first loss of the season.
Just a few days later, Temple wrapped up the tournament in Orlando with a showdown versus Davidson. The Owls trailed by 3 at the half, but it was in the second that things really opened up. Temple outscored the Wildcats 36-20 in the half, holding Davidson to just 1 of 15 from beyond the arc in the second half. Nate Pierre-Louis, Quentin Rose, and Jake Forrester were the only Owls in double figures, as Temple wins this one 66-53 to get to 6-1 on the season. In all, the Owls played 4 games over the break, and we talked about the Maryland loss and the Davidson win. Mixed in with those were wins against Texas A&M from the SEC and USC from the Pac-12. If anything, Temple put itself on the map. Alani Moore really stepped up offensively in Florida, averaging 14 points a game. And 6-1 is the best start for a first-year Temple head basketball coach since James Ulston in 1926. And it's also the second straight year the team started 6-1.
Coach Aaron McKee has a long history at Temple, but he's new to the head coaching game. And with this new recruiting class, there are players who will make an impact, but fans need to be patient.
Joining us live now from the Leocore Center to tell us more about the new Owls in the nest is OwlSports Update's Lindsay Moppert. Hey, Lindsay.
Hey guys, as a transfer athlete, you may be eager to start your season with a new team, but first, you might need to take a seat. Unless you meet the NCAA transfer exception, you'll be right next to sophomore guard Ty Strickland, who's spending his first season with the Owls on the bench. Good things come to those who wait. Ty Strickland is in good shape. As a transfer from a Big Ten school, per NCAA rules, the sophomore guard must sit out a year before being allowed to play for his new team.
I can't really play this year, so I got to get in after practice, before practice, stuff like that. And basically, I don't have to play in games, so my body can kind of take a back seat for now. The worst, at the absolute worst. I mean, this is the first time I've been a whole season without playing a basketball game, so it's definitely a shock, and just got to stay focused.
But this single season intermission doesn't necessarily mean that Ty is at a disadvantage.
This gives him a great opportunity to train as a Division I basketball player. When I say train, he's practicing with the guys, he's lifting weight with the guys. So in every sense of being a Division I basketball player, he's doing everything, but he just doesn't get the opportunity to play.
For Ty, it was the coaching staff that brought him to Temple. Unfortunately, the only shots he'll be putting up this season are after practice.
Well, Coach McKee is a great guy, former pro player, and I know that he has the best in mind for this team, and I know he wants to win, and that's something I want to be a part of.
For Ty, this season is all about staying focused and getting stronger. Using this opportunity to train as a Division I athlete, Ty plans to spend his time preparing to play for the Owls. When he takes his first step out on that court next year, he wants to be ready. I'm Lindsay Moppert, reporting from the Leocore Center. Sean and Brian, back to you.
Good stuff, Lindsay. Thank you. Now, while Ty must sit out a year, his teammate Jake Forrester, who also transferred this year, got an unexpected waiver from the NCAA over Thanksgiving break. The waiver immediately allowed him to play for the Owls. We're guessing it caught Temple off guard because when he took the floor during one of the games in Orlando, his name was spelled wrong on his jersey. You can see here that the S and the E are flipped, a slight spelling error in an otherwise successful trip.
Women's side of Temple basketball now. The team headed down to Cancun, Mexico in the Cancun Challenge. Game 1 was against North Carolina. The Owls were outscored 42-20 in the first half and could never recover, losing 71-58.
On to game number 2 versus Creighton. Temple led for some portion of the game, but it just couldn't keep up the pace. After dropping 16 points against the Tar Heels, Asona Alexander scored just 1 bucket in 32 minutes against Creighton. Temple loses 69-59.
The team finally got back in the win column on Wednesday with the win over Towson. This one back north of the border. Mia Davis led the charge with her 5th double-double of the season with 26 points and 15 rebounds.
An absolutely dominant performance from Davis and company. The Owls win this one 74-59 and are now 5-4 overall on the season.
Women's basketball has a short break before facing off against number 6 South Carolina on Saturday.
But it's time for us to take another short break as well, Brian. Coming up, we'll take a look at one of Temple's most dominant teams, fencing, and break down aspects of the sport you may know little about.
Is making a difference and exceeding expectations in the classroom.
I've had student athletes, they're amazing. Morgan was just, I could just tell she's on her way.
Welcome back to OwlSports Update. 5 fencing athletes found the podium at the Garrett Open over fall break. Margarita Calderaro placed first in epee after a final match against her own teammate Naomi Ross. All 4 foil fencers finished the top 25, with Ariana Apton placing as high as 3rd, and Carrie Plunkett showed out in the saber competition, finishing in 2nd. While the Temple fencing team makes it look all too easy, it's probably not a huge surprise that there's a lot more to success in this sport than meets the eye. OwlSports Update's Matt Daly found out just how tough the sport actually is with a little history lesson.
To the casual fan, fencing may look like a simple sport, but for those who compete and coach, simple isn't the adjective they might use. To understand the sport, we need a history lesson.
One of the original Olympic sports. It's been in the modern Olympics since 1896, and so it's been consistently part of the Olympic movement. And it comes from the old dueling, where the object was originally to injure or kill your opponent before they injured or killed you.
Fans might not notice there are 3 different weapons with subtle differences: the foil, epee, and saber. Each weapon has different characteristics.
Epee is the heaviest weapon because it's a large guard to protect your hand because your hand is target area. Saber and foil are about the same weight. They're pretty light, and so that you can move with them quickly.
Another difference between the disciplines is the strike zone of which you can strike your opponent.
With different strike zones in the 3 disciplines comes a difference in the strategy.
Waist up, so like anything above the wrist or above the waist. You don't have to just worry about point targets coming in, you have to worry about your outside area as well.
It's a lot slower because you have to set up what you do since you can hit anywhere and we can also hit you anywhere.
Because you definitely have to think about where you want to hit instead of epee, you can hit almost anywhere. So
Different fencers, different weapons, one complicated sport, made to look easy by those trying to master it. Reporting from the Temple Pavilion, I'm Matt Daly, OwlSports Update.
Thank you, Matt. The fencing team will continue to show how it's done when it travels down to Connecticut to participate in the Sacred Heart Invitational on Sunday.
The men's and women's cross-country teams took part in the NCAA Mid-Atlantic Regional. The men's team finished the race 4th overall out of 25 teams. Now, that's the best finish in program history. That included Temple having 4 runners finishing in the top 25. The women's team finished the race 7th overall, having 2 runners finish in the top 25. Everyone needs a helping hand. And for Morgan Basilio, she uses her hands not only as a starting goalie for the women's soccer team, but also for the disabled as part of her major here at Temple. Morgan Basilio makes a living off her hands, strong and fast in net as the starting goalie for the women's soccer team. But not everyone is so lucky. Her recent academic exploits have equipped her to help more than 2 million Americans in need of prosthetics.
I just had some family friends who kind of were into this field too, and were like, hey, that's a good idea, you should try that, this is what you're good at, so kind of just dove into it.
Basilio is part of a professional engineering organization that's been constructing a prosthetic hand among other projects. The team received $4,000 from the Caris grant her sophomore year. 2 years later, it's proven to be a complex process, making it a reality.
From there, we would have wires that connect to the forearm, And then once your forearm muscles contract, the code would realize it, and once those signals are produced, the fingers would move according to the signals that it receives.
Dr. John Helferty has mentored Morgan since her freshman year and has grown pretty fond of her enthusiasm.
It's been just a wonderful experience seeing her mature from her freshman year. I mean, this soccer stuff is the real deal. I mean, there's a lot of practice, there's a lot of time involved. And engineering, Dorothy, this ain't Kansas.
For Basilio, her hands are invaluable on the soccer field, and in the classroom, she's looking to give other people that same feeling.
We're always willing to make projects for someone. We want everyone to be involved, so we'll find something for you.
Basilio said she plans on continuing to broaden her range in the field in the coming years. Morgan and her team are constantly looking for ways to improve their projects, and in the future, she looks to use all the knowledge she's learned to make a career out of it. Now, with that being said, it's time for our final break of the show, but do not turn that dial because on the other side, we will be handing out some season awards.
That's right, MVP, Coach of the Fall, Team of the Fall. You'll hear our picks after a short break. OwlSports Update is back in 90 seconds. Welcome back to OwlSports Update. There were many standouts for Temple sports in the fall, but some athletes and coaches really showed up big for the Cherry and White.
And of course, we had to give them a special shout out. So with that being said, let's take a look at our Fall 2019 season awards.
Starting off with Team of the Fall, I'm going with men's soccer. The team's playoff run was remarkable, especially considering the fact that the team started the season 0-3.
Sean, I'm also going to go with the men's soccer team as well. The Owls won 4 out of their final 6 games, and that AAC quarterfinal win was the first in program history. Now, the next category is Coach of the Year, and for me, it's Susan Chufo. The way she reacted to the fireworks debacle at Kent State back in September is to be commended. She stood up for her team, not to mention the Owls won 7 games this year, which is 5 more than their 2-win season back in 2018.
Ryan, that's a good point, but I'm going to go with Rod Carey. This football program's been through so much in the past few years, and you have to give Carey some credit for coming in and leading the charge. To be frank, I didn't even expect the Owls to be bowl eligible season, but Carey and company proved me wrong with 8 wins. And of course, we need to name an MVP. I'm sticking with Temple football for my choice, Jaden Blue. Now, he's the single season reception and receiving yards leader with 87 catches and 975 yards. Brian, what more needs to be said?
This needs to be said, Sean. My MVP, I'm going with the master of disaster on defense, and that's Quincy Roche, the AAC Defensive Player of the Year. This man absolutely dominated offensive lines this season and set many records. He led the American with sacks with 13 and tackles for loss with 18.
Brian, look, we can talk sports all day long, but unfortunately, we only have 30 minutes today, and we're running out of time.
That's right. So check out our Twitter at OwlSports Update to see our inside look of the men's basketball video coordinator and the key role he plays behind the scenes. And that is a wrap for this edition of OwlSports Update, and it's also a wrap for this anchor duo for the semester. But be sure to tune in next Thursday for the last episode of OwlSports Update of the semester with JJ Myhowski and Adam Cronelli.
For our final sign-off, we'd like to thank all the people that make this show possible, especially our producers Kyle Morello, Matt Daly, our senior producer Aaron Steffi, and of course, executive producer Matt Fine. I'm Sean McGeehan.
And I'm Brian Steinmetz. Thank you for sticking with us all semester, and have a great weekend, everybody.